So today we're talking about the Zhiyun Crane M3. It's a 3-axis gimbal made for light cameras such as the Canon RP, which we're using today, or an iPhone or an action cam. So let's do this. So on the whole, I really like this gimbal. It's small, it's light, it is a little finicky. There are some things that I don't necessarily enjoy a lot with it, but for the price and for the compact nature of it, I'm not too turned off by it. It is a little finicky to balance, simply because it is a smaller gimbal. You have less range to balance things out, but it does work well. So the Canon RP works fairly well with this. It's a light camera. It has the ability to use 3 lenses as approved lenses. Right now I'm using the 16mm f2.8. It works fairly well with this. It's balances fairly quickly. Now it is a gimbal, so I don't necessarily need optical image stabilization in the lens, but if I did want to use the 35mm, I could do that. And so it's nice to know that those are options. Now with this gimbal, it has locking points, axes, so it does make it easier to focus in on being able to lock down and do your balancing at one axis at a time. It makes it super helpful, and then unlocking everything and making sure that you're in full balance. So the software on the gimbal itself has an auto calibrate. It does also give you, each axis what the tilt is based upon its working. So it does make it a little easy to balance. You could see, if there is a point in which you're a little too far over on the roll axis, or you need to push it elsewhere. So it does make it helpful and easy to balance that way. I don't typically use it to do these sort of heads up sort of presentations. I used it more for going through a client's workspace and filming some elements there. It worked really well. I do wish that it was easier to balance the Canon R6 on, simply because it's a better camera. And this here, I have to shoot either 1080p with the full sensor and be able to use the dual pixel autofocus, or use it with a wider 4K aspect, but it's got a punch in. Now on the 16mm lens, that doesn't affect me too much, but it's still good to know that I can. So really, who is this gimbal for? I'd probably say it's for small run and gun creators that do not have the budget to get a larger Ronin. I would also say it's for maybe novices or beginners. It is fairly easy to use, and it's easy to balance, and with the ability to have it's with these smaller mirrorless cameras, it does give you an option to pack up something super light and be budget friendly. I do not think this is as good of a gimbal as, say, my Ronin. My Ronin is a much better gimbal. It is able to handle a heck of a lot more weight, and it has the ability to add on handles and so forth, which makes it easier to get a good smooth shot. Also, with the larger cameras such as the Canon RP or the R6, the ability to do some of the underslung movements and so forth, and having full range of motion is not possible. The camera immediately bumps into the back roll axis and prevents you from being able to do those sort of moves. So I mean, it doesn't have the full range, but if you're using it with something like an action camera, or you're using it with a phone, you can do such things, and gives you the full range of motion. for its size and its price, it is a good deal. The limitations on what you could use it with do hamper you a little bit, but needless to say, it does give you the ability to do a lot. So the gimbal has a built-in light, so when I'm going in and out of shadows or in and out of light spots, it does help to give you a little bit of a, auxiliary light. Now, doing this and filming myself, it's very bright for this close to me, and so I do have this light spot in my eye now, and that's not the greatest in the world, but it does its job. It helps light up my face while I'm going in and out of shadows and in and out of spaces which the lighting could be less consistent. Now, you still need to do all the usual gimbal walking, ninja walking as I call it, and maintaining your smooth footsteps. This does a good job in smoothing out some things, but not all things. This camera, having it be the RP, does not have image stabilization or IBIS, so, and the lens I'm using does not have image stabilization either. So it's really important to make sure that you're walking and maintaining a little bit of smoothness, otherwise you will pick up those footsteps. Now, I'm not the greatest ninja walker ever, and so that could be a little problematic for me, but it does a good job in smoothing things out. Now, for these sort of shots, if I were just to hold it with a Gorilla tripod or something like that, you would definitely see those bumps and shakes. This smooths it out quite a bit, so it's a little bit better. So there's a number of different modes that this gimbal can do. It has all the standard modes. It has action, sports modes. It's got your follow modes and so forth. So on the whole, it's a fully functional gimbal. There's nothing that's left out or skimped on. With that being said, now it might not have the smoothest action as, let's say, a Ronin RS or so forth, but it does have a lot to give for the small run and gun compact shooter. So one thing that's a little annoying with this gimbal is there's a little small jerk when the lock is set. So as I hit the lock now, you'll see that it jerks forward and sort of sets into lock position. If I'm following something and I want it to then get locked onto a subject, if I hit that, it locks it in, but it does that little jerk. That's it's a nuance, but it's something that I don't quite enjoy. This is not necessarily what you would use a gimbal for. You don't always run around and film yourself with a gimbal. But I mean, it is pretty handy to do this, and so I'm not knocking it. And with how shaky and unsure I am, having any extra stability is welcome and great for me. On the whole, I do enjoy this. I'm probably going to use it when I travel and get a little bit more nuanced shots when I'm using some of my smaller cameras. Now, with the issues I've been having with the R6 and getting it to balance properly, especially with the 50mm lens, which is recommended to use a 50mm lens, since the focal element, the front lens telescopes, it runs into problems with balance quite frequently. So I probably just need to get a little bit better at balancing the gimbal, especially with the R6. But on the whole, I'll probably be taking this on my trips this summer and figuring out how to use it a little bit more appropriately. So if you want to know more about the Zhiyun Crane M3 and all the features and functionalities, and you want a little bit more in depth, let me know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll be doing more of this coming up. One of the things that I'm going to be working on a little bit more is animation, and so I'm going to be putting up animation videos and doing a little bit more of that work coming in the near future. Hope you have a great week. Enjoy it.